The young Apache woman said, "Don't just stare, cowboy. A dangerous bite threatens my life." Jack had always been a man drawn to open spaces. The vast desert of Arizona had a strange kind of magic, a quiet beauty that both challenged and calmed him. The sun was climbing slowly in the sky, casting long shadows over the rocky landscape. Jack rode his horse, Dusty, along a narrow trail that twisted between jagged cliffs and patches of desert scrub. Each step of Dusty's hooves against the hard-packed earth echoed faintly in the silence. Jack had been wandering this area for several days, exploring lands he had never visited, hoping to find new experiences, new stories, and maybe a glimpse of life he had never known. He was careful, yet his curiosity often got the better of him. He loved the adventure of the unknown, the chance of stumbling upon something unexpected. That morning, he had decided to follow a small river that glimmered like silver in the sunlight. The water cut through the desert like a ribbon, bringing life to the otherwise dry and arid land. As he rode, he noticed a flicker of movement ahead, near the edge of the riverbank. At first, he thought it was just the wind blowing through the reeds, but as he drew closer, he realized it was a person. She was standing there, tall and poised, her dark hair falling loosely over her shoulders. Her eyes were striking, sharp and alert, yet there was something calm about them, a quiet confidence that made Jack feel both cautious and captivated at the same time. She wore simple clothing, earthy tones that blended with the desert landscape, and she seemed to belong there, as if the desert itself had grown her from its soil. Jack slowed Dusty instinctively, his curiosity making it hard for him to look away. The young woman noticed him immediately. Her gaze was steady, and she didn't move away or hide. Instead, she stepped forward slightly, her voice ringing clear and firm over the gentle rush of the river. "Don't just stare, cowboy." Jack felt a sudden jolt of embarrassment. He had been so absorbed in watching her that he had forgotten himself entirely. Yet, he couldn't help but admire her courage. Most people would have turned and walked away or become defensive at a stranger approaching, but not her. She faced him openly, as though she could see into his intentions, as though she could read his thoughts. He cleared his throat and tipped his hat, the polite gesture feeling almost too small for the moment. "Sorry," he said, his voice quieter than usual, uncertain. "I didn't mean to, I was just," he trailed off, realizing words would not capture what he felt. There was something about her presence that demanded honesty and humility, something that made him feel as if he had stepped into another world, a world that required respect rather than curiosity alone. The young woman's lips curved into a faint smile. It wasn't mocking, but it wasn't welcoming either. It was a look that made Jack understand that respect had to be earned. "Names are important," she said softly but firmly, "and so is knowing where you are." Jack nodded, understanding the unspoken lesson. "I'm Jack," he replied. "I didn't mean any harm, I'm just exploring these lands." She studied him for a moment, then spoke again, her voice carrying the rhythm of the desert itself, steady and unyielding. "I'm Aeon. And yes, these lands are open, but they are not yours to wander without caution." Her eyes flicked to the river, to the rocks, to the cacti that rose like silent guardians from the sand. "There are things here that can hurt you if you are not careful. The desert does not forgive carelessness." Jack felt a mixture of awe and humility. He had always considered himself experienced in the ways of the land, but looking at Aeon, he realized how little he truly knew. The desert had rules he had yet to understand, rules that she seemed to know by instinct. And yet, there was a kindness in her demeanor, a willingness to teach, as if she understood that knowledge was something to be shared with those willing to listen. They began to walk together along the riverbank. Dusty followed obediently behind, kicking up small puffs of dust with each step. Aeon pointed out subtle details in the landscape, places where snakes might hide, rocks that were loose and dangerous, and the plants that were useful for water or food. Jack listened intently, absorbing every word. He realized that this encounter was more than a chance meeting. It was a lesson, and he had stumbled into it by accident. The sun climbed higher, making the river sparkle like a ribbon of light. Jack noticed how Aeon moved, graceful, precise, as if every step was intentional. She spoke little, but when she did, her words carried meaning. Jack felt both intimidated and inspired. He had met many people in his life, but few had commanded attention without demanding it. Aeon did so effortlessly. At one point, Jack tried to ask her about her life, about the traditions and stories of her people. She listened quietly, her dark eyes thoughtful, then answered with care. She spoke of the Apache way, the connection to the land, and the respect for every living thing within it. Jack realized that he was learning something far more important than survival skills. He was learning about balance, respect, and humility, the understanding that curiosity alone could not justify recklessness. Hours passed like this, with Jack following Aeon's guidance, learning to observe the desert rather than just move through it. He learned the language of the birds, the warning signs of hidden snakes, and the subtle changes in the wind that could signal a storm. With each step, he felt a deeper connection to the land and to Aeon, though he reminded himself that his admiration had to remain respectful. He could not let fascination turn into entitlement. As the afternoon sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting golden light over the desert, Jack realized that he had spent an entire day in Aeon's presence, learning more about the desert and about himself than he had in years of wandering alone. He felt a sense of gratitude, a recognition that this encounter was rare and precious. He had come seeking adventure, but he was leaving with wisdom, humility, and the understanding that some lessons could not be learned from books or maps. They could only be learned from those who lived and breathed the land. Aeon finally stopped near a cluster of rocks, looking out over the river that wound through the canyon. She turned to Jack, her expression calm but firm. "Remember," she said, her voice carrying weight beyond her years, "don't just stare at life as if it belongs to you. Observe. Listen, learn, and respect it." Jack nodded, feeling the truth in her words. He knew that this encounter would stay with him forever. The young Apache woman had not only captured his attention, but had opened his eyes to a world he had barely understood. And as the sun set, painting the desert in hues of orange and gold, Jack realized that he had stepped into something far greater than a simple journey through the wilderness. He had stepped into a lesson in life itself, one that demanded courage, humility, and respect. And in that moment, he silently promised himself that he would honor it, not just in the desert, but in everything he did from that day forward. Jack felt the warmth of the morning sun on his back as he and Aeon continued along the river. The night had brought cooler air, but the desert was already waking up. Birds called from the cliffs above, and the faint sound of rustling leaves echoed through the canyon. Jack was beginning to understand that the desert was alive in ways he had never imagined. Every movement, every sound carried a message, if only one took the time to listen. Aeon walked ahead with steady, confident steps. She moved as though the land itself was a part of her body, each step deliberate, each glance scanning for danger or opportunity. Jack found himself watching her, not out of curiosity this time, but out of admiration. She seemed to understand the desert instinctively, aware of every hidden danger, every potential resource. He realized how little he truly knew. "You need to be careful here," Aeon said suddenly, stopping near a large rock formation. Her voice was calm but carried authority. "Rocks can be loose. Some trails look safe, but they hide danger." She gestured toward a narrow path along the cliffside, where the dirt crumbled easily underfoot. "A small mistake could cost you your balance. Always watch your step." Jack nodded, tightening his grip on Dusty's reins. He had grown up around animals and the outdoors, but Aeon's knowledge made him feel inexperienced. "I'll be careful," he said, though he realized words were not enough. He had to actually listen and pay attention. As they moved forward, Aeon began pointing out small details in the landscape. "See that plant there," she said, indicating a cluster of green leaves near the riverbank. "Its roots hold water. If you're ever lost, you can rely on plants like this." She touched the leaves gently, showing Jack how to break them without damaging the plant. The desert gives life if you know how to ask for it, but it will not tolerate greed or carelessness. Jack studied her movements closely. There was a rhythm to her actions, a knowledge passed down through generations. He realized that survival in the desert was not just about strength or courage. It was about patience, observation, and respect for the environment. Aeon seemed to understand this instinctively. "Watch the birds," she said after a moment of silence. Jack followed her gaze to a small group of sparrows flitting between the rocks. "They know where the water is. They know where danger hides. You can learn from them." Jack tried to memorize everything she said. He felt like a student, and Aeon was both teacher and guide. Every word carried meaning. Every action was a lesson. He had wandered the desert alone many times before, but this was different. He was not just exploring. He was learning to live within the desert's rules. They reached a narrow part of the canyon where the river ran fast over rocks, forming small white rapids. Jack's heart beat faster. The current looked stronger than it seemed from afar, and one wrong step could easily send him tumbling into the water. Aeon moved first, stepping carefully across the slippery stones. She held out her hand for Jack when he hesitated. "Take it slowly. Feel each stone before you step. Trust your senses, not your confidence." Jack followed her advice, placing each foot deliberately. Dusty moved cautiously behind him, responding to the subtle shifts in weight and balance. Step by step, they crossed the river safely. Jack felt a rush of relief and pride. He realized that every lesson Aeon taught was not just about survival, it was about understanding, patience, and awareness. After crossing, Aeon stopped and looked at Jack. "You have to remember this, the desert is honest. It does not forgive mistakes, but it will reward those who respect it. Curiosity is good, but caution is better." Jack nodded, feeling the truth in her words. He had come into the desert thinking it was simply a place of adventure, a place to explore freely. Now he understood it as a teacher, one that demanded humility and attention. He felt a growing respect for Aeon, not just for her knowledge, but for the way she carried herself, always calm, always observant, always ready. As they continued walking, Aeon began to share small stories about her family and her people. She spoke of how her ancestors had lived in the desert for generations, learning its secrets, respecting its power, and teaching each generation how to survive. Jack listened intently, fascinated by the connection between the land and the people who had lived in harmony with it for centuries. "You see," Aeon explained, "our people understand that the desert is not empty. Every rock, every plant, every animal has a purpose. We do not take more than we need. We give respect, and in return, we receive guidance and protection." Jack thought about his own life, about how often he had taken things for granted, moving through the world without truly seeing it. Aeon's words made him realize how little he had understood about life and survival beyond the obvious. He felt a mix of humility and gratitude. Hours passed as they trekked along the river, each step a lesson in observation and patience. Aeon showed Jack how to recognize footprints in the sand, how to predict changes in the weather by watching the clouds, and how to find signs of animals hidden in the landscape. Every lesson was practical, yet it carried a deeper meaning, a reminder that life was about paying attention, being present, and respecting the world around you. At one point, they stopped near a shaded area where the river slowed. Aeon knelt down and demonstrated how to collect water safely from the river, filtering it with natural materials to make it drinkable. Jack followed her instructions carefully, feeling the importance of every step. He realized that even a small mistake in these simple tasks could have serious consequences. As the sun moved higher in the sky, Jack began to feel the physical strain of walking through the rough terrain. Dusty's hooves were tired, and the heat pressed down on him like a heavy blanket. Aeon noticed his fatigue but did not rush him. She encouraged him with quiet words and gentle guidance, showing him the importance of pacing himself and conserving energy. By mid-afternoon, they found a small clearing where they could rest. Aeon had already gathered some wild plants and berries, explaining which ones were safe to eat. Jack marveled at her knowledge, realizing that survival was not just about skill, but about understanding the delicate balance of nature. They ate in silence for a while, the quiet of the desert wrapping around them like a protective shield. Jack felt a sense of peace he had never experienced before. There was a rhythm to life in the desert, a harmony that could be understood only by those willing to observe and learn. Aeon had not only taught him practical skills, but had also shown him how to connect with the land, how to respect it, and how to move through it with awareness and humility. As they prepared to move again, Aeon gave him one final instruction for the day. Remember, Jack, curiosity is a gift, but it must be tempered with respect. You are not here to conquer the desert, only to learn from it. Pay attention, listen, and you will find your way safely. Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had started the day thinking of the desert as a challenge, a place to explore and test his limits. Now he understood it as a teacher, and Aeon as his guide. Every lesson, every observation, every careful step was a reminder that life in this land required patience, awareness, and respect. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the canyon, Jack felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had come seeking adventure but was leaving with wisdom. Aeon's guidance had transformed a simple journey into a life-changing experience. And though he knew there were still dangers ahead, he felt more prepared than ever, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. That night, as they camped near the river, Jack reflected on the day. He thought about Aeon's words, her calm confidence, and the lessons she had imparted. He realized that survival in the desert was about more than skill. It was about understanding, respect, and connection. And he felt a growing admiration for the young Apache woman who had become both his teacher and his guide, showing him a world he had never truly seen before. The morning air in the desert was crisp, carrying the faint scent of dry earth and distant wildflowers. Jack and Aeon had resumed their trek along the river, moving carefully over rocky terrain that demanded constant attention. Jack was more alert than ever, his senses sharpened by Aeon's lessons from the previous day. He no longer rushed through the landscape but moved with awareness, noticing every sound, every shadow, and every subtle change in the environment. Aeon walked ahead with her usual calm confidence, scanning the terrain with sharp eyes. Jack noticed how her movements were fluid, almost effortless, as if she were one with the land. Her footsteps were light but precise. Each time she stepped over a rock or crossed a small stream, she paused, assessing the ground, feeling its stability, and testing it before committing her weight. Jack tried to mirror her movements, knowing that every lesson she had taught was designed not only to keep him safe, but to help him truly understand the desert. They reached a narrow canyon where the river had carved a series of small pools and waterfalls. The water shimmered under the morning sun, inviting yet treacherous. Aeon paused and knelt near the edge, inspecting the rocks beneath the water. "These rocks look safe, but some are slick," she warned. "The current may be stronger than it appears. One wrong step and you could fall." Jack carefully followed her, placing each foot with deliberate care. Dusty stepped cautiously behind him, moving as though he understood the danger. Jack felt the weight of responsibility, not just for himself but for his horse as well. He had come to respect the desert, and he had learned that overconfidence could be dangerous. As they continued, Jack's mind wandered to the lessons Aeon had shared about the desert's hidden dangers. Snakes, scorpions, and other creatures often went unnoticed until it was too late. He remembered the way Aeon had taught him to spot subtle signs in the sand or rocks, the telltale shadows of a snake coiled beneath a bush, the faint tracks of small animals that hinted at predators nearby. He was confident in his ability to avoid danger, yet he also knew the desert was unpredictable. Then, without warning, Jack felt a sharp, burning pain on his ankle. He stumbled and instinctively jumped back, clutching his leg. "Ah! Something bit me," he shouted, his heart racing as adrenaline surged through his body. He looked down and saw a small rattlesnake slithering away into the rocks, its tail vibrating faintly in the dirt. Aeon's reaction was immediate. She knelt beside him, her expression calm but focused. "Stay still," she said firmly. "Don't panic. Panicking will make it worse." Jack tried to steady his breathing, but the pain was intense, spreading quickly through his leg. He could feel his pulse pounding in his temples as fear and pain threatened to overwhelm him. Aeon quickly assessed the bite. She recognized the telltale marks and knew that without prompt action, the venom could spread and cause serious harm. "We need to act fast," she said. "I can help, but you must trust me and follow my instructions exactly." She instructed Jack to sit down carefully, making sure he remained calm. Then she examined the wound and prepared a tourniquet, wrapping it just above the bite to slow the spread of venom. Jack winced as the pressure tightened, but he understood it was necessary. Aeon spoke softly, encouraging him to focus on his breathing, to stay calm, and to avoid moving his leg unnecessarily. While keeping Jack calm, Aeon prepared a natural remedy using plants she had identified along the river. She crushed leaves and applied them gently around the bite, explaining each step as she worked. "This will help slow the venom," she said. "It's not a cure, but it gives your body time until we can get proper help." Jack was amazed by her knowledge. In that moment, he realized how crucial it was to have someone experienced and calm in dangerous situations. He had always relied on his instincts, but instincts alone were not enough. Aeon's guidance and expertise were keeping him alive. Hours seemed to stretch endlessly as Aeon carefully supported him along the path back to her small, hidden settlement. Each step was painstaking, and Jack's pain grew, but her presence gave him strength. She talked quietly, distracting him from the fear and discomfort, sharing more stories of her people and their survival techniques. He listened, grateful not only for her knowledge but for the steady reassurance her words provided. Along the way, they encountered small obstacles, loose rocks, sudden dips in the trail, and thorny bushes, but Aeon navigated them with precision. She guided Jack to move slowly, ensuring his injured leg bore minimal weight. Dusty followed silently, sensing the tension and acting cautiously. Jack marveled at how Aeon managed the situation with calm determination, her every action purposeful and measured. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of the settlement. Aeon led him to a shaded area near a small cabin where she could attend to the bite more thoroughly. She removed the tourniquet carefully, monitoring Jack's pulse and breathing as she cleaned and bandaged the wound. Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had survived, and it was entirely due to Aeon's knowledge, quick thinking, and calm presence. As Jack rested, he reflected on the danger he had faced. The bite had been a terrifying reminder of the desert's hidden threats. He realized that his curiosity and confidence had almost cost him his life. He had underestimated the environment, assuming he could navigate it with ease. Now he understood that survival required more than courage. It required awareness, respect, and knowledge. Aeon sat beside him, her expression softening. "You're lucky," she said. "Not everyone survives a bite like this. You have to remember that. Respect the desert, respect life, and it will give you guidance and protection." Jack nodded, his thoughts heavy with gratitude. He had entered the canyon seeking adventure. But he had learned a far more important lesson about humility, preparedness, and trust. He realized that Aeon's guidance had been invaluable, not only for surviving the bite, but for teaching him how to move through the world with care and awareness. As evening approached, Aeon prepared a simple meal of wild plants and river fish she had caught earlier. She explained which plants were safe to eat and how to prepare them, reinforcing the importance of knowledge and observation in the desert. Jack ate slowly, appreciating not just the food but the lessons it represented. Every step, every bite, every action in the desert carried meaning. He had learned to see the world differently, through eyes attuned to detail, caution, and respect. That night, as they sat near a small fire, Jack reflected on the day's events. The bite had been a terrifying experience, yet it had taught him more than any ordinary day of exploration ever could. He realized how easily life could change in the desert and how important it was to listen, observe, and trust those with experience. Aeon had not only saved his life but had taught him lessons he would carry forever. He looked at her, the young Apache woman who had faced the desert with unwavering confidence. She had acted decisively when danger struck, and her calm demeanor had given him the courage to endure the pain. He understood now that survival was as much about mindset as it was about skill. Being alert, prepared, and respectful of the environment could mean the difference between life and death. Before sleep claimed him, Jack made a silent promise to himself. He would never take the desert lightly again. He would remember Aeon's lessons and respect the land, its creatures, and its people. And most of all, he would honor the trust she had shown him, knowing that it had saved his life. The desert around them settled into quiet stillness, the river whispering softly, the wind carrying faint scents of sage and earth. Jack felt a deep sense of connection, not only to the land but to the young woman who had guided him through danger. He understood that this experience would shape him forever, changing how he approached the world, how he treated others, and how he viewed life itself. And as he drifted into a deep, exhausted sleep, he knew one thing with certainty. He would never forget the day the desert had tested him, nor the courage and wisdom of the woman who had ensured he survived it. The sun rose slowly over the canyon, casting a warm, golden light on the rocky landscape. Jack had slept deeply through the night, exhausted from the snake bite and the adrenaline that had carried him the previous day. When he opened his eyes, he felt the stiffness in his leg and the lingering ache from the venom, but he also felt a profound sense of relief. He was alive, and he had Aeon to thank for that. Aeon was already awake, moving quietly around their small campsite. She tended to Dusty, brushing his coat and checking his hooves, making sure he was ready for the day. Then she approached Jack with a calm expression, her eyes meeting his. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her voice steady but gentle. Jack tested his leg carefully, flexing his ankle. "Better," he said, "though it still hurts." He tried to sit up straighter, wincing slightly. Aeon nodded, as if she expected the discomfort, and handed him a cup of water. "You need to stay hydrated," she said. "Your body is still recovering, and the desert will take more from you if you are weak." Jack took the water slowly, appreciating the simple act of care. He realized how much he had taken for granted in his life: his health, his safety, his ability to explore freely. Now he understood that every step in the desert demanded attention, patience, and respect. He looked at Aeon, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. Her knowledge and calm presence had not only saved his life, but also given him a new perspective on survival. After breakfast, Aeon helped Jack to his feet. She supported him carefully, showing him how to walk without putting too much pressure on his injured leg. "We'll move slowly today," she said. "The desert has no hurry, and neither should we. Every step must be deliberate, every action considered." As they moved along the river, Aeon pointed out new details that Jack had never noticed before. She showed him how to identify safe drinking water, how to find shelter in unexpected places, and how to read the signs of the wind and clouds to anticipate weather changes. Jack absorbed every word, realizing that survival in the desert was not just about physical strength, but about knowledge, observation, and awareness. "You see, Jack," Aeon said as they walked, "the desert is a teacher. It shows you your weaknesses, your strengths, and your patience. It will test you, but if you learn from it, it can also teach you skills that last a lifetime." Jack listened carefully, feeling the truth of her words. He had always thought of the desert as a place of adventure, a challenge to be conquered. Now he understood it as a living environment with its own rules and rhythms. He began to notice small details he had overlooked before. The way the sunlight reflected off a rock to indicate moisture underneath, the subtle tracks of animals in the sand, the way a certain bird's call could signal approaching rain. Aeon stopped near a cluster of desert shrubs and knelt down, examining the soil. "Look here," she said, pointing to small burrows. "These are homes for lizards and small mammals. They hide from predators and the heat. By watching them, we can learn about the desert's balance and rhythms." Jack crouched beside her, studying the burrows and the tiny footprints around them. He realized how little he had noticed in the past, how often he had rushed through the landscape without truly observing it. Aeon's guidance had taught him the importance of attention to detail, patience, and respect for all living things. They continued their journey, moving slowly and deliberately. Aeon explained how to identify edible plants, how to purify water naturally, and how to use the desert's resources without taking more than necessary. Jack marveled at her knowledge, realizing that her skills were the result of generations of learning and experience. As the day progressed, they encountered a small group of wild animals near the river, a family of deer grazing cautiously among the rocks. Aeon whispered to Jack, showing him how to observe without disturbing them. "Notice their movements, their behavior," she said. "Every animal has a story. By watching them, we learn patience, timing, and awareness. These are the skills that will keep you safe." Jack watched silently, absorbing every detail. He realized that survival was not just about avoiding danger. It was about understanding the environment, respecting it, and learning from it. Aeon had taught him to see the desert not as a hostile place, but as a living, breathing world with lessons to offer. By late afternoon, they reached a shaded canyon where the river formed a small pool. Aeon encouraged Jack to rest, helping him settle on a smooth rock. She removed the bandages from his ankle carefully, inspecting the bite and ensuring there was no swelling or infection. Jack felt a wave of gratitude. He had survived a potentially deadly encounter, and Aeon's careful attention had ensured his recovery. As Jack rested, Aeon shared more stories about her family and the Apache way of life. She spoke of how her ancestors had survived in the desert for generations, learning its secrets, respecting its power, and teaching each new generation how to live in harmony with the land. Jack listened intently, fascinated by the depth of knowledge and wisdom contained in her stories. "You see," Aeon explained, "our people understand that the desert is not empty. Every rock, every plant, every animal has a purpose. We do not take more than we need. We give respect, and in return, we receive guidance and protection." Jack thought about his own life and how often he had taken things for granted. He had wandered through the desert with curiosity and confidence, unaware of the dangers around him. Now he understood that true survival required not just skill, but humility, patience, and awareness. He felt a growing admiration for Aeon, not just for her knowledge, but for the way she carried herself with calm confidence, teaching through action rather than words. As evening approached, Aeon taught Jack how to prepare a simple meal using the resources they had gathered. She showed him how to clean and cook small fish from the river, how to collect edible plants safely, and how to use the fire to conserve energy and resources. Jack followed her instructions carefully, realizing that each task carried lessons in survival, patience, and respect for the environment. After dinner, they sat by the fire, watching the sunset paint the canyon walls in shades of orange and gold. Jack reflected on the day's events, realizing how much he had learned in just a few hours. Aeon had guided him through danger, taught him to observe and understand the desert, and helped him recover from a life-threatening bite. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and respect. "You've learned a lot in a short time," Aeon said softly, noticing his thoughtful expression. "But remember, survival is not just about skills. It's about understanding yourself, your limits, and your environment. The desert is honest. It will show you who you are and what you can endure." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had always thought of himself as capable and self-reliant, but he realized that true strength came from knowledge, awareness, and trust. Aeon had not only taught him practical skills, but had also shown him the importance of humility and respect. As night fell, the canyon grew quiet, the sounds of the river and the wind becoming the only companions. Jack lay on the ground, gazing up at the stars, feeling a deep sense of peace. He had survived a dangerous encounter, learned valuable lessons about the desert, and developed a trust in Aeon that went beyond words. He knew that the experience had changed him. He would never see the desert or life the same way again. He had learned that survival depended not just on courage, but on observation, patience, and respect for the world around him. Aeon had shown him that life's most important lessons often came in moments of challenge and reflection. And as he drifted into sleep under the vast, star-filled sky, Jack felt a quiet determination. He would carry Aeon's teachings with him, not just in the desert but in every part of his life. He had learned to move carefully, to observe closely, and to respect every living thing. And most importantly, he had learned the value of trust, patience, and humility, the qualities that had saved his life and would guide him in the days to come. The morning sun bathed the canyon in a warm, golden glow. Jack woke feeling stronger than he had the previous day. The pain in his ankle was fading, replaced by a sense of determination and clarity. He looked around at the landscape, taking in the quiet beauty of the desert, and felt a deep gratitude for the lessons he had learned. The river sparkled like a ribbon of silver, winding through the rocks and shrubs, and Dusty grazed quietly nearby, his tail swishing lazily. Aeon appeared from behind a cluster of rocks, her expression calm and steady as always. She had already prepared a small breakfast, and the aroma of roasted plants and river fish drifted gently through the morning air. "You're looking better today," she said with a small smile. "Your strength is returning." Jack smiled back, though there was still a lingering sense of awe. He had survived the snake bite, learned to respect the desert, and gained knowledge he knew he would carry for the rest of his life. "I feel stronger," he admitted, "and not just because my leg is healing. I feel like I understand so much more about this place and maybe about myself too." Aeon nodded. "That is what the desert teaches. It tests you, challenges you, and shows you who you are. But it also rewards those who pay attention, those who respect its rules and live with awareness." They ate in silence for a while, listening to the river and the faint rustling of the wind through the canyon. Jack reflected on the events of the past few days, the encounter with Aeon, the lessons along the river, the terrifying snake bite, and the careful guidance that had kept him alive. He realized how much he had grown in such a short time. After breakfast, Aeon led Jack on a slow walk along the riverbank. She wanted him to practice the skills she had taught, moving carefully over rocks, observing the signs of animals, and noticing changes in the wind and the clouds. Jack moved deliberately, following her instructions, aware of each step and each breath. He had come into the desert thinking he was confident and capable, but he now understood that true confidence came from knowledge, observation, and respect. As they walked, Aeon shared more stories about her family and their traditions. She spoke of ancestors who had survived harsh winters, dry summers, and dangerous encounters in the desert. She told Jack about the importance of community, of helping and protecting one another, and of learning from those who came before. Jack listened, fascinated by the depth of understanding and wisdom in her words. You see, Aeon explained, the desert is not just a place of survival. It is a teacher of life itself. It shows you patience, courage, humility, and respect. Those who listen learn more than just survival. They learn how to live with awareness and kindness. Jack reflected on her words. He realized that his adventures in the desert had been about more than exploring new lands. They had been about understanding himself, his limits, and his place in the world. He thought about the mistakes he had made, the moments of carelessness, the times he had rushed without thinking, and felt gratitude that Aeon had been there to guide him through danger. As the day progressed, Jack began to feel a growing connection to the desert. He noticed the subtle patterns in the rocks, the tracks of animals in the sand, and the way the sunlight shifted across the canyon walls. Every detail told a story, and he felt a deep respect for the environment and the life it supported. Aeon walked beside him, observing him carefully, her presence steady and reassuring. By midday, they reached a small clearing where the river widened into a calm pool. Aeon encouraged Jack to rest, and he took the opportunity to reflect on the journey. He thought about how fear had almost overtaken him during the snake bite, and how Aeon's calm, knowledgeable guidance had saved him. He realized that courage alone was not enough to survive in the desert. It required awareness, patience, and trust in those with experience. Aeon noticed his thoughtful expression and spoke softly. You have learned well, Jack, not just how to survive, but how to observe, how to listen, and how to respect. These lessons will stay with you wherever you go. Jack nodded, feeling the truth in her words. He understood that his experience in the desert had been transformative. He had come seeking adventure, but he was leaving with wisdom, humility, and a deeper understanding of life. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to carry the lessons he had learned into every part of his life. As the afternoon sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the canyon, Jack and Aeon continued along the river. They moved slowly, deliberately, taking in the beauty and complexity of the landscape. Jack felt a sense of peace he had never experienced before, a connection to the desert, to Aeon, and to the life around him. He realized that the lessons of survival were also lessons of life, lessons about patience, observation, respect, and trust. When they finally reached the edge of the canyon, where the land opened up into a wide valley, Jack paused. He looked back at the river, the rocks, and the shadows of the cliffs, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The desert had tested him, challenged him, and changed him. And Aeon had been the guide who had helped him understand it, survive it, and learn from it. I will never forget this experience, Jack said quietly. I will never forget the lessons or the guidance or your courage. Aeon looked at him with a calm smile. Remember, Jack, the desert is honest. It will always show you the truth if you are willing to observe and learn. Respect it and it will give you wisdom. Take these lessons with you, not just for survival, but for life itself. Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He knew that his time in the canyon had changed him in ways he could not yet fully understand. He had learned to move carefully, to observe closely, and to respect every living thing. He had survived danger, built trust, and gained knowledge that would guide him for the rest of his life. As the sun set, painting the valley in shades of orange and pink, Jack and Aeon set up a small camp for the night. The river whispered gently in the background, and the desert wind carried the faint scent of sage and wildflowers. Jack felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that he had survived a dangerous encounter, learned invaluable lessons, and connected with a wise and courageous guide. That night, under a sky filled with stars, Jack reflected on everything that had happened. He thought about the snake bite, the lessons of observation and patience, the stories of Aeon's family, and the deep respect he now felt for the desert. He realized that survival was not just about courage or skill. It was about awareness, respect, trust, and connection. He looked at Aeon, sitting quietly by the fire, and felt gratitude for her guidance, her knowledge, and her calm presence. She had not only saved his life but had taught him lessons that would last a lifetime. He understood now that true adventure was not about conquering the land, but about learning from it, respecting it, and moving through it with awareness and humility. As Jack drifted to sleep, he made a silent promise to himself. He would carry the lessons of the desert with him wherever he went. He would respect life, observe carefully, and trust those who guided him. And he would never forget the courage, wisdom, and kindness of the young Apache woman who had changed his life forever. The next morning, Jack prepared to continue his journey. He felt stronger, wiser, and more aware than ever before. He looked at Aeon one last time, feeling a deep sense of respect and gratitude. "Thank you," he said simply. Aeon smiled, her eyes reflecting the calm strength he had come to admire. "Remember what you have learned," she said. "Carry it with you, and you will always find your way." With that, Jack mounted Dusty and began riding toward the open valley, feeling a new sense of purpose. The desert stretched out before him, vast and challenging, yet beautiful and full of life. He moved with care, observation, and respect, remembering the lessons that had saved his life and transformed his understanding of the world. As the wind brushed against his face and the sun warmed his back, Jack felt a deep sense of connection to the land, to Aeon, and to the lessons that would guide him for the rest of his life. He knew that the encounter in the desert had changed him forever. He had